Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody around the world. Welcome to another GMAT Club live video session. My name is Guglielmo. I'm the founder of Avanti Prep, MBA Admissions Consulting. We work with candidates all around the world on their application strategy, school selection, essay brainstorming, essay reviews, resume reviews, interview prep, recommender selection and recommendation strategy, soup to nuts, you name it. We invite you to visit our website at avantiprep.com to review our services, review testimonials, and sign up for a free consultation if you'd like to chat. A big part of what we do, and a big part, of course, of what you are going to encounter if you're not already kind of neck deep in it this year, are developing and articulating career goals, developing and articulating reasons why you need an MBA, and developing and articulating very specific rationale for why each school is the place for you, why it's the right fit for you given your needs as well as given what you can contribute. So we're going to walk through today those topics: goals, why MBA, why XYZ school, or why our school. You can fill in a specific name, of course, with a particular focus on the essays that those questions show up in. Historically, that's kind of been one single essay. Nowadays, we see it a little bit more piecemeal for certain schools, but still definitely see it in a single essay for some others. So welcome. We'll take questions. I'll walk through some things over the course of the presentation, and then we'll take questions at the end. So I think you can feel free to pose those questions, and I or our admin will highlight them, and toward the end, we'll definitely save time to address those questions. I do have to make kind of a funny aside, because a lot of what we do these days is by video. And when we work with applicants on interview prep, I'm so often, especially if it's going to be video interview prep, part of what we talk about is making eye contact through the camera and making sure that you're, wherever you look, wherever your eyes are going to be, are near to where the camera is located on your screen. For most people, it's toward the top of their screen. And I only bring this up kind of in a funny way is because I'm using a computer today where my camera is on the top of the keyboard. It's at the bottom of my screen. So it makes my eye contact a little bit of fun, a little bit funny, a little bit different than what I'm used to. But yeah, just a little tip for the future when you're doing interview prep. Your eye contact in person can naturally be eye to eye. That's a lot easier to do. To create that same sensation of engagement, that same eye to eye feeling on video interviews or any video interactions you might have, we often encourage people to put whatever window, wherever their eyes are going to be, nearest to that camera, so it looks like eye contact is being created. I got a little bit of a weird angle here today, and I'll be looking up at my presentation as well. So apologies in advance if my eyes aren't quite, if my eye contact isn't quite what it usually is. But in any event, welcome again. We're going to deconstruct today the career goals, why MBA, why our school essay, or at least the parts or kind of mini essays where it might show up these days. And, it's not even so exclusively specific to essays. It's something to keep in mind for your broader application narrative, for your interviews down the line. It's going to permeate the whole process, but also show up oftentimes specifically in certain essays. What kind of essays am I talking about? We'll just skip ahead for a moment here. These are some examples on the screen right now of full or almost full versions of this question. You'll hear, by the way, this question referred to sometimes colloquially or using a shorthand as a career goals essay question. Historically, years past, you often heard it referred to as a personal statement. Excuse me. You'll still see the word, some schools use the word personal statement here and there, but that phraseology, I think, is a little dated now. I think more often you will hear career goals. People refer to it in shorthand as a career goals essay. Couple of quick comments on both of those. Personal statement's almost a little bit of a misnomer, I think. The essay is personal in that it's very, very unique to you, very, very specific to you. but it's still a very professional essay as well. And career goals, that kind of shorthand, it doesn't totally scratch at everything that needs to be in this essay. So you'll hear people say the career goals essay or the goals essay, but really what they're most often referring to are essays like the ones you see on the screen. And there are really several parts to that essay. What are your goals? Why are those goals your goals? What's the passion and purpose behind those goals? But what are your goals? Why do you need an MBA? Why now? And why our school are usually all kind of baked in to those essays. So you see some examples up here on the screen. By no means is this a comprehensive list, but these are schools that ask full or almost full versions of this question. If we looked years ago, we actually would have seen many schools, or many more schools, if not most schools, or if not almost all schools, asking versions, more complete versions of this. There's been a little bit of a trend away from it, or at the very least, as we'll see when we click through to some other schools, we'll see that some schools have begun asking just certain parts of these or kind of deconstructing it themselves, but we'll walk through that. This is kind of the, what you see on the screen here is kind of the master question, full or almost full versions. I do like University of Washington Foster's way of asking this, just for an illustrative standpoint, because I think it kind of spells out for you all of the different things that live in this essay question. Tell us your ideas about what lies ahead in your career. So what are your short and long-term goals? Some may perhaps even, what are your short, medium, and long-term goals? What is the future? What is your future vision? Short, medium, long-term. Tell us what lies ahead in your career. Tell us your ideas about what lies ahead in your career. What are the gaps or deficiencies currently preventing you from pursuing these potential career paths? So you can think to yourself, well, if what I just shared is my future vision, short, medium, long-term goals, think backward from there. What knowledge, skill, experience do I already have that's relevant to those goals? And what knowledge, skill, experience am I missing in order to achieve those goals? Those are the gaps. How do you plan to use your time in the Foster MBA program to fill these gaps and advance your career? That's the why Foster. So you have in versions of this essay, in this essay question, you have all kind of the classic component parts, and UW Foster, University of Washington Foster, really spells it out very specifically for you, quite prescriptive even in what they want you to include, and they give you 750 words to answer it, which is pretty unique. Excuse me. Most other instances, you're going to see 500 words or thereabouts. London Business School has a similar type of question. Wharton rewrote their first essay question this year to make it even a little more prescriptive. It was a little shorter. What do you hope to gain professionally from the Wharton MBA last year? Now it is a little bit more prescriptive and more akin to some of these others where they're really kind of winking at you and telling you what the component parts are. But those are all component parts we knew and wanted to make sure that we included anyway. So what are those component parts? Let's deconstruct this essay, and I think it can help to deconstruct it into six parts. Sometimes there might even be a little bit of a seventh part. We'll talk about that in a moment. Those are the six that you see on the page. We'll walk through them. We'll walk through each of them in sequence. I should note that just because I'm kind of sharing or presenting these in six component parts, it doesn't necessarily mean, and really it doesn't mean, that each of these six parts should get equal attention in your essay. I'll elaborate on what I mean by that, but these are kind of the parts or the notes that we'd want to hit in those complete versions of this essay question. And as I mentioned before, even if you might end up applying to schools where you apply to 4 or 5 schools and only 2 of them or something have those complete versions of this essay question. Odds are some of the others are going to include parts of these. They might just ask what your goals are. They might just ask, or they might just ask your short-term goals, or they might ask your short-term goals and why their school. You'll see different combinations of this. We'll walk through some examples of essay questions like that on the ensuing slides and over the course of this presentation. But even if you don't have the full version of the essay question, even if you don't encounter these in their component parts, again, this kind of thinking, this kind of framework is important, if not critical, to have in your mind for the totality of the application process. You're going to get questions like this in interviews. This is the framework, if you will, or a framework, if you will, that you can have in mind and be able to articulate, and there are going to be opportunities and really necessity to share it at different points in your application journey. Essays, interviews, other kind of interactions, perhaps with current students and alumni or people from admissions. This stuff is going to come up. So it's very, very important to think about for both the essays that we're tackling today and just in general. 6 parts. First part, what are your short-term goals? Go deeper than just industry. Describe firm, team, role, projects. What do you hope to work on, and what impact do you aim to have? I should note, by the way, these don't need to show up necessarily in this order either. I'll elaborate that on a moment, particularly items 1, 2, and 3 listed here. Sometimes they're kind of fused together. Sometimes they come in slightly different order. Sometimes you open with number 3, the passion and purpose behind your goals. So that'd be kind of unique to you and unique to, sometimes it even kind of reveals itself to you as you go through your various iterations of these essays. So again, just because there's 6 things on the page doesn't mean you have to kind of like, present them in exactly this order or give them 1/6 attention each. These are just the component parts that lurk within. And then when everything kind of comes out or comes to life in your essays, you'll see the flow and you'll be able to identify the most effective way to deliver it. But one of those key items, one of those first key items, is to think about your short-term goals. What are your post-MBA goals? What do you plan to do or hope to do upon graduation? You see the comment in there to go deeper than just industry. Something we encounter pretty much every year are people who, let's say, applied on their own. Maybe they did a little bit of a rushed job. Maybe they didn't quite grapple with the totality of what needed to go into these essays, but they shared goals in there. We'll look at their essays. They say, gee, your goals here, you only just said you want to go into consulting, or you only just said you want to go into investment banking. They didn't go deeper than that. So we want to go deeper than just industry. We really want to go layers deeper than that. If you're going into consulting, let's say, you might start as a generalist. Most people coming out of MBA programs do begin as a generalist, meaning they cover various industries, various types of projects. But what about after serving, let's say 2 years as a generalist? Is there a certain industry focus area, a certain practice area, a certain group within that consulting firm that you'd love to join? Why are you interested in that group in particular? Is there a certain area of functional expertise, a certain type of project that you think you'd want to specialize in? So think and unpack those layers. If you're interested in going into investment banking, similar concept. We certainly don't want to just say, I want to go into financial services. That universe is enormous. You wouldn't want to even just say, I'm going into investment banking. Go layers deeper than that. What team, what firm, what geography, why that team, why that practice area, why that group. So think of those layers. And again, we could have this conversation about essentially every industry. If you have entrepreneurial goals, we really, really need to hear what those are and what the momentum is and what the vision is. If it's technology, what type of firm, what type of product? I want to go into product management. Well, what kind of tech firm? At what stage tech firm? What kind of product? You also want to get to know and connect with, this will kind of come up as important later on this slide as well when we talk about number 6. What are the business school's specific resources, offerings? What about its community and culture? But here as well with the goals, we really, really, really encourage you, reach out to students. If you're interested in consulting or technology or finance or real estate or healthcare, whatever the case may be, you really want, and I would say need, to connect with students at the programs that you're applying to understand what the recruiting dynamics are for that industry at the school to which you're applying. So you want to understand what the school's resources are for that interest. What are the courses, clubs, extracurriculars, conferences, case competitions? What about its community and culture and all those things? But also for your goals. You want to inform those goals. We wouldn't want to articulate goals or companies here in these essays or landing spots, ideal post-MBA landing spots that the MBA program never sends students to. You want to read each school's employment report. Every school put together, usually it's a multi-page PDF. And if you want to just find it quickly, you can Google the name of the MBA program and employment report. Columbia MBA employment report, Berkeley Haas MBA employment report. You'll find kind of usually a direct link to those PDFs or those reports. Some are more detailed than others, but you'll see all of the data, all of the statistics around what industries and functions people at each program graduate into. You'll see salary information, geographic information. Some schools, more than others, will also report top hiring companies, and still others will sometimes report which of those companies hired multiple students. Some will even say how many exactly, and which hire international students as well as domestic students. And that last part can be important as well. If you are an international student applying to a US program, or say vice versa, there are visa considerations to keep in mind. So again, connecting with club representatives, student ambassadors, ideally in this case, as it relates to goals, people who are in the program that you're interested in, who are recruiting, following a similar recruiting path that you hope to. How do you find those jobs? Are the recruiters coming to campus? Do you have to do a lot of it on your own? Which companies hire and sponsor for visa international students? What offices do they hire for? That type of granular detail and research, not just at your desk research, but also outreach, is super important and helps inform all of this. It helps inform number 6, but it also helps inform number 1. And as you have those conversations, these layers will come to life. Ultimately, those layers, as detailed as all of that sounds, ultimately they get scaled down into 4 or 5 sentences maybe in your actual 500-word goals essay. But solving for that, developing the specificity is absolutely key. We encourage you to do it and then infuse it into these essays. Similarly, what are your long-term goals? A little bit more difficult. Of course, it's hard to project far forward into the future, but really reflect on that. The quote that you see on the page there with number 2, what is your compelling vision for the future? What legacy do you want to leave? That's a quote that comes, I believe, from a Tuck MBA admissions blog, but it's a nice kind of concise way for you to think about what's the bigger picture problem that I hope to solve. Be ambitious here. It's okay to be ambitious. We still want to keep that ambition connected to you and connected to that which would precede it in your career, the short and maybe the medium term goals. But what are you hoping to solve? What are the challenges in your chosen field that exist where if you looked into the future, 15, 20, 25 years down the road, it said, these are the things that are coming in that industry, or these are things that are kind of maybe creeping in now. I want to wrestle with those challenges. I want to solve that bigger picture problem. What stamp do I want to leave on the industry? Or what do I want to create? Or how do I want to shift that industry in a different direction? What impact do I hope to have? So long-term goals, again, admittedly, a little bit more difficult. The short-term goals, sometimes that path's a little more linear. And if you talk to people at the schools, you'll see what the companies are that hire in your industry and for what teams and groups and for what specific roles. Again, all very important, not just industry, but examples of firms and teams and roles. Long-term goals, a little harder, takes a little more introspection, a little more reflection on your part, but try to develop those as well. You'll see in parentheses up on the screen for number 2, also to consider the bridge between short and long. You can't always do this. Some schools will kind of ask you very brief, Chicago Booth asks you what your short-term goals are, I think in 250 characters, and what your long-term goals are in 250 characters. Then they have a whole essay, by the way, about why Booth. Maybe in situations like that, there's not a ton of space to elaborate on medium-term goals, but in essay form, 500-word essays, for some people, not always, but for some people, it can even make sense to paint this whole forward picture, not just this this kind of barbell of short and long, but what's your actual path, short, medium, and long? Is there a bridge between the short and the long? Sometimes that helps too, because if your long-term goals feel really like, aspirational, which again is good and okay, and look again at that quote. What is your compelling vision for the future? What legacy do you want to leave? You might feel like, well, gee, to paint this picture well from this short-term post-MBA job to this long-term compelling vision for the future, I do want to tell them what would come in between. So don't be afraid of painting that picture. I think it can, in the right kind of format, like a 500-word essay, or even some other versions of questions like this, can be very valuable to consider that medium-term goal as well. Item number 3, why are these goals your goals? How did they evolve? What is the passion and purpose behind them? What bigger picture problems are you aiming to solve? I mentioned that a moment ago. So think to yourself, where, beyond just the black and white of what those short-term goals are and the black and white of what those long-term goals are, why are these goals your goals? How have they come to be? Were there certain influences in your life, certain projects you perhaps worked on at your previous job, or things you were exposed to, or maybe a marriage thereof? Is there a certain moment? Maybe it was one of those aha moments or transformative moments that kind of compelled you or inspired you toward these. Think about those things. What is the genesis of these goals? What are the seeds from which they kind of have come to be? What inspires you toward them? I mentioned earlier that the order of delivery of these items doesn't need to be in 1, 2, 3 as presented on the page. Here we sometimes find that item number 3 can make for a good opener to crack open your essay in this somewhat of a compelling way, particularly if there was a certain anecdote or moment you want to share that enables us to draw the reader into this essay and into your goals and understand why they are what they are. Again, it'll be different for different people. I've seen literally the 1, 2, 3. I've seen it done effectively in all orders: 3, 2, 1, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 3. Any of the combinations thereof. But usually that will reveal itself to you, I think, as you go through and work through these essays. On the same token, by the way, you don't want to bury the literal goals, the short and long-term goals, too deep in the essay, something that, in journalism, they would call burying the lead. We don't want to leave if we're halfway through your essay and we still don't know what your goals are, and the question asked what those goals are, you want to revisit that. You can open with number 3 as kind of an introduction, but then you would want to slide into the goals thereafter. We don't want to kind of talk, even though I do a lot of talking on these calls. We don't want to write, and we sort of leave the reader wondering, well, gee, what are these applicants' goals? But think about those. It does take reflection and introspection. If you're not sure, by the way, you've got friends, you've got family members, potentially you've got peers who are at MBA programs like this. You've got admissions consultants if you choose to go down that road. So you can, include people or cast eyes on this to help determine what is the most effective method of delivery. And also, even taking a step back from that, what are compelling, specific goals? Are my goals specific enough? Are they connected enough? Are they coherent, and do they feel achievable? At least the short-term goals, do they feel achievable? Really, the long-term should feel achievable, even if it's a little more aspirational as well. So soliciting that feedback can be very, very effective, both at the kind of story and goal development and essay brainstorming, and then mechanics of delivery at all those different phases of the process. Don't be afraid to solicit that kind of feedback to make sure everything feels clear and specific enough and connected enough. You might find that what I just described in a 500-word version of this essay, I'll flip forward just again so we could see, let's say, London Business School or Wharton's version of these. London Business School, LBS, what are your post-MBA goals? That's kind of the first part. And then how will your prior experience and the London Business School program contribute toward these? Wharton, how do you plan to use the Wharton MBA program to help you achieve your future professional goals? You might consider your past experience, short and long-term goals, and resources available at Wharton. Oftentimes, items 1, 2, and 3 on this page, they might take up the first 40%, 45, maybe 50% of a 500-word essay like this. I think, again, it can vary a little bit person to person, but it's shorthand, you might think of it about first half of your essay, items 1, 2, and 3 in a 500-word essay. In that UW Foster version, a little bit of a one-off because they allow you 750 words. Maybe it forms like the first third of your essay, and you can go into more detail about why MBA and why Foster with the remaining, 2/3. But I think for like a 500-word classic version of this, I'll usually find that 40 to 50% of the essay allocated toward items 1, 2, and 3 on this page is an effective approach, with some variance, of course, candidate specific. The remaining items on the page. Item number 4, what knowledge, skills, or experience do you already have that are relevant to these goals? What prepares you or lays a foundation for you for these goals? Be specific. I've got on here the acronym ABCD. Talk about that in a second. I would say this item number 4, it's in here. It's usually worth noting, or at least tipping your cap to or nodding to in the essay. Some schools, like, I'll flip back, LBS asks, how will your prior experience contribute toward these, before then asking how will LBS contribute toward these. Wharton's got that little nod in there too, to considering your past experience. Not every school, I would say probably even most schools, do not explicitly request anything about the past. And this really is a forward-looking essay or a forward-looking narrative. But in order to kind of explain what your gaps are, in order to get to 5 and 6, even if the school does not explicitly ask in the essay to say, well, what's your foundation for these? What past experience or skill or relevant knowledge do you have? Even if they don't ask that, it usually still makes sense to comment on it briefly. You don't want it to eat up too much of the essay. Again, it's a forward-looking essay. What are your goals? Why MBA? Why our school? But a little bit of a nod to say, okay, if I just painted for you this picture of what my goals are, if I just painted a picture of 1 and 2 and 3 on the page right here, let me take a step now, kind of go backward from there. I just painted you that forward picture. This is my vision for the future, short, medium, long-term goals, why these goals are my goals. I usually say, by the way, what are the goals within your goals? So not just what's the job I seek, but what do I hope to accomplish within that job? What are the goals within your goals? When I'm in that job or in that role, what do I hope to work on? What impact do I hope to have? You paint that forward picture. Now come back and say to yourself, well, if those are my goals, if that's my vision for the future, what knowledge, skills, and experience do I already have that are relevant to these goals? You're kind of saying to the admissions committee, I just painted that vision for you. Well, I've got a base. I've got a basis for this. I've got some seeds. I've got some relevant knowledge, skill, and experience. Be specific with it. Try to really crystallize A, B, C, D. I've already got these pillars or these seeds or these anchors that give me a firm foundation to achieve this. It makes your goals feel credible and realistic. Be brief with that. Still be brief with that. So be specific, but concise. They are not mutually exclusive. And then think to yourself, okay, if those are my goals and I've already got A, B, C, D, which give me a foundation for these, What am I missing? What's missing in between? My goals are here. My forward vision's here. I've already got A, B, C, D. Well, I'm missing E, F, G, H. What you're missing is item number 5. Those are the gaps. So I've got relevant knowledge, skill, experience, A, B, C, D, but I'm missing knowledge, skill, experience, E, F, G, H. Those are my gaps. That's my YMBA. So that when I combine what I already have, very briefly delivered usually, with what I'm missing, when I combine A, B, C, D with E, F, G, H, that combination of things enables me to achieve that forward vision, that future vision, those goals that I shared. If A, B, C, D is kind of brief because it's mostly just kind of setting up 5 and 6, you could almost think of 4 as like a bridge, item 4 on this page, almost like a bridge toward the second half of the essay, or the bridge between the first half of the essay and the second half of the essay. So if 4 is the bridge, that means items 5 and 6 are, let's say, the second half of the essay. Item 5 is essentially YMBA, and item 6 is essentially why our school. They can be addressed separately. A lot of, I think, even if you look at like a Tuck essay 1, it's 300 words. YMBA and why Tuck is effectively the question. And if you read blog posts about that, the admissions directors will even say, we want you to spend half the essay on YMBA and half the essay on why Tuck. I think oftentimes though, so I would heed that advice for an essay like that. Spend about half the essay. This is from their blog post. Spend about half the essay on YMBA. Spend about half the essay on why Tuck. In a lot of other cases, though, you will typically find that 5 and 6 can perhaps be delivered together. And what I mean by that is, you painted that forward vision, that career goals vision, items 1, 2, and 3. You gave a nod to what knowledge, skill, and experience you already have that are relevant to those goals, A, B, C, D. Well, now I'm going to articulate in the second half of this essay why I need an MBA and why I need that MBA from Wharton or LBS or Indiana Kelley or UW Foster, to use some of the examples I have on that next page. E, F, G, H, crystallize those gaps, crystallize very specifically why you need an MBA. You painted that picture of your goals. Well, are there certain hard skills or certain knowledge that you currently lack that you would need to pick up or gain through the MBA program in order to achieve those goals? What exactly are they, and why do you need them for that, to achieve that future vision? So that you might try to crystallize something around that as your E gap. I'm using these letters, but I think it does help to kind of imbue, hopefully, upon you the level of crystallization and specificity that should ideally be captured in here. So I've got this gap, E. Here's why it's important to achieve my goals, and here's exactly how XYZ school, or the school to which I'm applying, uniquely fills that gap. Here again, it's kind of 5 and 6 in unison, or you could think about them in couplets almost. I've got this E gap. Be very specific about it. It should be very specific to you and your goals. Introspective, reflective, specific. What's that gap? Call it E in this case. And how does the school to which I'm applying uniquely fill that gap? Same thing then with F. What's that next gap? And then same thing with G and same thing with H. Try to have diversity between these gaps. We don't just want to hear about, the knowledge you're missing or the hard skills you're missing, and then just hear about courses or professors or something as your why Wharton or as your why Kelley or as your why Foster. We want to think about all of the different gaps that you have, very different gaps, and all of the different resources that the school has to fill those gaps. Some might be more knowledge and hard skill related. Others might be more hands-on experience related. Others might be more leadership related, soft skill related, communication, personal growth related, working in cross-cultural teams or international teams. Some might be related to community or network, or recruiting or career centers or location of the school. the list is I don't want to say it's endless, but it's not, it's not cookie cutter. It should be very, very unique to you. So you have to reflect the same way you reflect on what those goals are, reflect on what your gaps are, number 5, and then inform yourself about how the school uniquely fills those gaps. A good rule of thumb, by the way, as you think about those gaps and you think about that why our school, you think about number 5 and number 6, if you could take the gap that you're articulating and the resources that you're articulating at the school, 5 and 6 here, if you could take your response to that from your essay and drop it in my essay or somebody else's essay or somebody else's essay, then it's not specific enough. We need that to be really specific to you, specific in context of your goals. Why is this gap preventing you? Why do you need to fill that? How does it play into your goals? And then how does the school uniquely fill that gap? Even with number 6, we don't want to just make kind of passing or superficial reference to things at the school. You want to show that you know and have really stuck your hand or your head into the details and the culture and the offerings of the program. Here's where, again, that school research and engagement, not just what you do at your desk, though that is important as well, getting lost on different blogs and different resources of the school. Do all the reading you can. That's great. But speaking with students is critical as well. Speaking with students who are charting the path that you hope to chart. Speak with students, obviously, of course, not just interested in what you're interested in professionally, but if there are social groups, affinity groups, cultural groups, what have you that you're interested in, speak with those people as well, or just speak with a region representative or a student ambassador. Schools have all sorts of different platforms to connect with them. They really want you to do that. Attend online events and webinars and virtual classes. Attend virtual coffee chat. Most of it's going to be virtual these days still. Virtual coffee chats, or sometimes there'll be certain themed events around a certain industry or initiative. And again, those one-on-one conversations, I think, are really the ones where you'll help develop your thoughts around your goals, and especially number 6, what are the school's resources, courses, clubs, extracurriculars, case competitions, conferences, what is unique about the school's culture and community. And you're just going to pick up these tidbits that transcend what you could otherwise just read on the internet. And that helps really enhance your essays and enhance your articulation of item number 6 on this page beyond mere, I'm going to join XYZ club. Okay, great. But what are you going to do? You got to reach further than that. Layers of specificity on all of these things is critical. What role? Is there a certain role in that club that you seek? And what would you do in that role? And how does that role, how does what you do help you build a certain skill set or fill a gap that you need toward your goals? So be specific and tie to your goals. Now, very important, it's in parentheses on here. Maybe I should take it out of parentheses. It says, how will you contribute? That's very, very, very important. Some schools have second essays or other essays where contributions might more specifically come to life. The classic example of this is Wharton's essay 1, which you see listed here again, is more about your goals. How do you plan to use the Wharton MBA to help you achieve those goals? What resources are you going to avail yourself of? At Wharton has a second essay, 400 words, that is specific to contribution. So we know for a Wharton that the contributions are going to come in a separate essay. A lot of other schools, this is where you really have to kind of strategize, unique to each school. You have to look at what the essay landscape is for the schools you're applying to. And figure out, well, where you do want to share somewhere, how you can uniquely contribute to the program as well. We want to make sure it's a two-way street. You want to make sure, I know some of the way we've been talking about these things is how you benefit and how your gaps get filled. Well, that's great, and you need to share that. But either in that separate essay like Wharton, a contribution-specific essay, or in the, why our school, what are your goals, why MBA, why our school essay, you want to find a way to communicate contributions. Maybe one of the EFGHs should be contribution oriented, or perhaps the contributions should permeate or can permeate. You benefit, you contribute, and in contributing, you are both growing and filling a gap and creating value for peers and the school. So make sure contributions are present. We want contributions to be similarly unique. Again, not just the low-hanging fruit of like, I'm going to contribute by joining such and such a club or organizing such and such a conference. We've got to go a couple of layers deeper than that. What are you actually going to do if you are in such a role for such and such a club? Or if you're organizing that conference, maybe you spoke with the person who planned it last year, and now you have an idea about something you could add to it, not to diminish what they've done, but just to build on it, leveraging your own unique experience. So think about those contributions. There is you don't just want to take. You also want to give. Some cases, again, like Wharton, you'll have a specific essay around that, or maybe a certain school will ask about their culture or their community, and it becomes an opportunity. Duke Fuqua, by the way, has a whole essay about community engagement and contributions. Cornell Johnson has a contributions essay or an impact essay, 350 words. So some schools, you have to kind of look at the essay landscape at a school by school basis. If there's not an impact or contribution specific or community specific essay, then odds are that in this essay, you should find a way to articulate your unique contributions. And just as how the school helps you should be very, very specific, your contributions should be very, very specific, unique, well-developed, and ideally informed even by conversations you've had with students. Those conversations, by the way, can become referenceable in these essays. A lot of schools these days will ask, even most close to all schools I can think of, will have a question in their online application that more just literally and straightforwardly says, tell us what students or alumni you've spoken with, or what events you've attended, and you list them. So they do see, and you don't want to get caught flat-footed on not having attended those events or webinars and spoken with students and alumni. So that's a place where it shows up. But it really, that school research and engagement, it really shows up here as well in the specificity and the how developed your thoughts are about the school, and about how you can contribute and how you'd benefit. And you could even kind of reference diplomatically, not in a forced way, but reference some of these conversations you've had. Name the person you spoke with, and you might even kind of reference what you don't have to laundry list them or do it for every sentence, but there might be one or two or three opportunities where it makes sense and comes across in a natural way. And again, those conversations were really, there's no substitute for that. The light bulbs that are going to go off for you when you have those conversations, and the cumulative benefit of them is going to show up in the nuances of your goals and the specificity and nuance with which you're able to discuss the resources at the school and how they benefit you, 5 and 6, as well as how you'd uniquely contribute, either baked into this essay or in a separate essay. That's a lot, I know, but hopefully it helps. Let's just tick through different versions of these. I mentioned at the outset that we've got some schools that ask complete or almost complete versions of this, and then there are other schools that kind of ask it in different ways and patch it together a little differently, and then we'll go to questions. So here again, examples of full or almost full versions of this question. I've got Indiana Kelly on the bottom there. Again, these are just representative examples, not a comprehensive or complete list. But Indiana Kelly there at the bottom, I say almost full because Kelly's got a little bit of a nuance. If you read the first sentence, discuss your immediate post-MBA professional goals. How will your professional experience, when combined with a Kelly MBA degree, allow you to achieve those goals? Kelly doesn't want item number 2. They're not asking about your long-term goals. They're asking only about number 1, but pretty much everything else is in there. So you could just scratch off number 2 about the long-term goals. And here for Kelly, you'd be answering 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. They do have this added kind of question. Should the short-term goals you've identified not materialize, what alternate career paths might you consider? That's an add-on that you'll see sometimes. I know Duke Fuqua, as an example, has it included in what's a 100-word expression. for them, a 100-word goal expression for them. They also want to know your backup plans. UNC Keenan Flagler, I believe, is another one that comes to mind. And that you'll see a few of these out there where the school wants to know. So that would be, I guess you could call it an item number 7 if we were to put it back on this list. Think about what are schools doing there with a question like that? Should the short-term goals you've identified not materialize, what alternate career paths might you consider? Well, schools are interested. You'll see the stats floating around. What percentage of students who graduate from a given program have placed at a job, at graduation or 3 months later or 6 months later? Schools are interested in making sure that you are successful coming out of their program. So you might have a main or primary post-MBA goal, but think about yourself and inform yourself about what you would do as kind of a backup option, an alternate path if option 1 doesn't work out. You don't have to spend like a ton of the essay on this, but it still should be, think to yourself, still should be an achievable post-MBA goal, something that, the program actually sends people into, something that ideally would be still connected to your interests and your goals. Is there another way, at those goals? You wouldn't want these alternate plans to come like out of nowhere or be completely unrelated to everything you've talked about elsewhere. We should think, what's the connectivity? What is another way to appeal to these interests I have and these goals I have, but via a different path or different recruiting path at the school, and one that is still a fairly vibrant recruiting path at that school? You can again show that you've, maybe done a little of your homework here and been introspective, been thoughtful. So look out for those. A couple schools have that kind of backup plan question within. In all of these, though, here, Kelly, good example of reminding us to, as an old history professor of mine used to say, to grapple with the complexity of the question. Read the questions closely. What exactly are they asking? Kelly, if we grapple with that complexity, if we read that nuance, Kelly is not asking about your long-term goals, so you can get rid of or wipe away number 2, but then they are asking that alternate goal add-on question, let's say, at the end. A few schools on here, really actually, LBS, Wharton, Kelly, they do have that nod to your professional experience or your past experience. Item number 4 here, what knowledge, skill, or experience do you already have? So, make sure you include that. Other schools for this essay won't explicitly, like Foster does not explicitly ask you what knowledge, skill, experience you already have that's relevant. But as I mentioned earlier, it's still worth tipping your cap to that. It's still worth speaking to that, not in great detail. You don't want it to eat the essay, especially when like Foster doesn't even explicitly ask about it. But to articulate the gaps or deficiencies you have, it can definitely help to first say what you do have that's relevant, the basis for it. Sometimes it even helps, by the way, sometimes 4 and 3 can kind of connect to one another because, sort of in tandem, you can speak to perhaps where the interest came from. If the interest arose from things you've done at your current job or at your previous job, well, you could kind of potentially speak to the evolution of these goals and the passion, the evolving passion and purpose behind them, and simultaneously cover the relevant experience or knowledge or skills that you have. So definitely look at the nuances and read the questions closely. You'll see they all kind of they can vary just a little bit. Other ways that these vary. Here are some examples of what I call cross-response versions of this question. So all those parts that we talked about and how for schools like Foster, LBS, Wharton, Kelly, these things kind of come, those component parts, or most of them, come through a single essay question. Other schools, 3 examples of which are on the page, you're getting these parts in different areas of the application, not in a single essay. Tuck asks you to share your short-term goals in a short answer in the application, the online application. Share your short-term goals, 50 words. Share your long-term goals, 50 words. And then they have their first essay question. Tuck students can articulate how the distinctive Tuck MBA will advance their aspirations. Why are you pursuing an MBA and why Tuck? So you've got essentially the parts, those 6 parts we talked about, but they're not all in the same essay. Your short and long-term goals are in short answers, and then why MBA and why Tuck are in the essay. Booth, kind of similar to that. What is your immediate post-MBA career goal? 250 characters. What is your long-term post-MBA career goal? 250 characters. How will the Booth MBA help you achieve your immediate and long-term post-MBA career goals? That's a why MBA, why Booth. Look for opportunities. By the way, 250 characters for your short and long-term goals. That's not much space. You might find in an essay like Booth that a little bit of elaboration on 1 and 2 on your short and long-term goals, and certainly perhaps even in Tuck, a little bit about where these goals come from. Just a little bit, perhaps even in the opening of the essay. In Tuck, it's only 300 words. You don't want to, and it's why MBA, why Tuck. You wouldn't want to eat the essay with other material, but a little bit perhaps about the passion and purpose behind them. Or you can look with Tuck to try to infuse that into these 50-word responses. Booth, 250 characters, more limited. You might find that at the start of the main essay, essay 1 for them, why Booth, why MBA, why Booth, a little bit of elaboration. If you feel like your goals are not properly covered by those 250 character responses, just a little to crack open the essay, and a little bit of the passion and purpose, a little bit of the vision, a little bit of the goals within the goals can sometimes help at the start of that essay. And then you'd kind of be into a nod to number 4, the knowledge, skills, experience. A nod, by nod, I mean a brief coverage, like EFGH, items 5 and 6 on here, EFGH, why MBA, why Booth, why MBA, why Tuck, or why MBA, why Booth. That's like the preponderance of the essay. The ABCD is just to kind of set it up. It might be a sentence or 2. So just keep those in mind. Columbia, somewhat similarly, what is your immediate post-MBA professional goal? 50 characters. Similar but not similar. Columbia has a 500-word essay just about your goals. Through your resume and recommendations, we have a clear sense of your professional path to date. What are your career goals over the next 3 to 5 years? And what, in your imagination, would be your long-term dream job? 500 words, all about your goals. They really kind of want 1 and 2 and 3 in 500 words. I would say that Columbia really puts the most pressure on you out of any school I can think of to go into rich detail about your vision and about your goals. In a lot of other cases, with Tuck on this page, you're giving your goals in a total of 100 words. Booth, you're giving a total of 500 characters between those 2 short answers, maybe a little bit more at the start of that essay that follows. These other schools, 500 words in the first half of the essay might cover your goals, and the passion and purpose behind them first 40 to 50%. Columbia, you've got 500 words just about your goals. So you really, really need to develop the specificity around them and deliver it there. And then Columbia has a separate question, which this year, by the way, is now optional. Why do you feel Columbia Business School is a good fit for you? That's where why MBA, why Columbia, elements of that, and really more of a fit and contributions as well can come to life. Again, that last one is now optional. The 500-word Columbia response is required, and then Columbia gives you 3 other choices, 250 words. You choose 2 of them, of which one is there, the why is Columbia Business School a good fit for you? Here are some examples of targeted or part-focused versions of this question. Darden, what is your short-term post-MBA goal, and how does it align with the long-term vision you have for your career? So it's short and long, but and perhaps some elements of the passion, the purpose, and definitely the vision baked into that. Ross, what is your short-term career goal and why? 200 words, Michigan Ross. So focused on short-term, but don't ignore that why. Why is that your goal? They are not asking here. Again, pay attention to what exactly each school is asking. Neither Darden nor Ross have asked you why MBA or why Darden, why MBA or why Ross. They will ask you those things most often in your interview, if you end up having one, but those are not explicitly asked here. Sometimes you might see a tiny, tiny nod to a YMBA or something like in a closing sentence. But, again, you read your blog post, watch the interviews. I think you'll see that, they'll even remind you, we're not asking that. Ross is asking, what is your short-term goal and why? These are targeted or part-focused versions of those questions that we deconstructed. Cornell Johnson, they have you fill in the blanks about your short and long-term goals, that you fill in your job role, an example company, and the industry. It's kind of like a fill in the sentence, and then ask a question, one of their 3 essays. How has your experience prepared and encouraged you to pursue these goals? Again, grapple with the complexity of questions like that. How has your experience prepared you to pursue these goals? What knowledge, skill, experience do you already have that's relevant to these? What foundation of relevance do you have? Here they're asking explicitly about it. You probably want to give it more attention than just that nod I mentioned earlier. How has your experience encouraged you to pursue these goals? Why are these goals your goals? So grapple. There's 2 verbs in there, prepared and encouraged. You could almost read that sentence 2 times in 2 different ways. How has your experience prepared you to pursue these goals? How has your experience encouraged you to pursue these goals? And here with 350 words, maybe at the very back of that, we could give a nod here to YMBA, maybe a tiny nod to why Cornell Johnson. They don't ask why MBA or why Johnson, but in 350 words, as long as you've dedicated the preponderance of the essay question to answering exactly what they've asked, a little bit of a nod to those things in like a closing sentence or 2 can be okay. What are we seeing here? We're seeing that in these targeted or part-focused versions of this question, you are kind of differently sizing those 6 components that we went through earlier. Cornell Johnson basically pays attention sort of to numbers 3 and 4. They ask 1 and 2 through the fill in the blanks. And then how has your past experience encouraged you to pursue these? Well, that's basically number 3. Why are these goals your goals? How did they evolve through your previous experience? Are there things you did that kind of piqued your interest in these goals? What's the passion and purpose behind them? What's the bigger picture problem you're posing? It's kind of focused on 3. And then how has your previous experience prepared you to achieve these goals? That's basically number 4, which in a lot of essays you're almost just giving a brief nod to, but here Cornell Johnson is asking it very explicitly. In this essay, they have less attention focused on 5 and 6. I mentioned a moment ago, maybe in a concluding remark or something, you can project forward to things like how Cornell helps you, what gaps you have, why MBA, why Cornell, though Cornell has a second essay, an impact essay that's very Cornell specific and contribution specific, Cornell Johnson specific. Yale SOM has this, by the way, it brings up another point. This is a 250 word, I'm going to call it an essay that exists for Yale SOM, but you might say, well, hey, I'm applying to Yale, and I looked on their website, and it says that I only have 1 essay, 500 words. Well, this is hiding within their application, just as for Tuck, share your short-term goals, share your long-term goals, 50 words each. That's hiding in their application. It's not listed on their essay page. Booth, what is your immediate post-MBA? What's your long-term post-MBA? Those are not listed on, if you look at like a list of essay questions, these things are not always listed, the short answers. You should, I would encourage you, open applications for the schools that open the online application for the schools you're interested in and click through the pages just to make sure you're not missing any of these short answers and such. Eventually, you obviously have to fill them in anyway. But Yale here, hiding in the online application, they don't advertise it as an essay. You have drop downs where you fill in 1 word, basically an industry about your short and long-term goals. And then they ask, how did you arrive at these career interests? How have you or will you position yourself to pursue them? Deconstruct those question parts again. How did you arrive at these career interests? How have you positioned yourself to pursue them? How will you position yourself to include them? Are 3 that very quickly I would say I see in there, and we can map those back to that 6-pointer list from earlier. How did you arrive at these career interests? Why are these goals your goals? Where did they come from? I believe that was item number 3 earlier. How have you positioned yourself to pursue them? What knowledge, skill, and experience do you already have that's relevant? That was item 4 on our list of 6. How will you position yourself to pursue them? What gaps do you have, and does Yale SOM have unique resources that fill those gaps? Only 250 words. That's a lot to capture in there. And I do, just as an aside, and then we'll go to questions. Sometimes here too, you need to elaborate just a little bit on your goals, because they only give you those one-word drop downs. So from a one-word drop down, it's tough to know what exactly goals are. So you try within these 250 words to also just make sure the goals are clear, beyond just the one-word drop downs. Why do I need clear goals? Because even if just in a sentence or something, because that clarity helps then inform how I arrived at these career interests, what relevant knowledge, skill, experience I already have, how have I positioned myself to pursue them, and how will I position myself at Yale or going forward. Short answer only versions of this question, by the way, where you really have to boil things down. Harvard Business School, briefly, tell us more about your career aspirations. 500 characters. They added a comma this year, I believe, after briefly, but that question's been there for a while. Duke Fuqua, what are your post-MBA career goals? Share with us your first choice career plan and your alternate plan. I mentioned that earlier, just like Indiana Kelly, or I believe UNC Keenan Flagler asked about the alternate. Fuqua, these little quirks that are, I guess, when you live and breathe this stuff like I do, you notice them. Fuqua tells you it's 100 words that you have for this answer. It's actually character driven. I think they say about 100 words. I believe it's really 500 characters that they give you there. So just watch out for that. Make sure your response fits in the text box of the application. Kellogg has targeted versions of these, almost more like tweet length, maybe a little shorter in some cases. What is your desired position after Kellogg? 150 characters. What's your long-term career goal? 150. What drives your interest in these goals? 240. Again, it's 1, 2, and 3 from our list of 6, but delivered in these really micro. They force you to synthesize it quite a bit more. Contrast that again with Columbia, who gives you 500 words to basically cover these same questions. Kellogg's giving you a total of 540 characters. Columbia is giving you 500 words to basically say my short-term goals, my long-term goals, and why these goals are my goals. And again, Columbia, you got to go into layers deeper of your vision. Georgetown McDonough, at least last year, I believe this was, I have to double check just to confirm this year, but they had 1 or 2 sentences about your short-term and long-term goals that they allowed you in the app, and they had some drop-downs surrounding that. So let's leave it there. We did about an hour. I know that's like drinking from a fire hose and a lot to cover, and hopefully I didn't speak too quickly, but you can, on YouTube, always rewind and pause and, listen to certain parts, hopefully. We do invite you, of course, to visit our website, avantiprep.com, where you can sign up for a free consultation. We invite you to read our verified client testimonials written by, and usually in pretty significant detail, by former clients. So you could get a very granular, I would say that they are among the most transparent and detailed reviews, verified client reviews and testimonials out there. You could get a kind of a specific insight into what it's like to partner, and how, apropos to today's conversation, we help applicants think about all of these different things, develop story, develop goals, develop specificity around those things, ensure connectivity between the professional trajectory that you're painting a picture of and why you need an MBA and why certain schools, ensuring those layers of specificity in terms of what you talk about, how you articulate your gaps, how you articulate why Wharton, or why Columbia, or whatever, why Tuck. Layers of specificity, not just superficial references, not just references that can get pulled out of your essay and dropped into somebody else's and still work. They would need to be really tailored to you, really tailored to your goals, really tailored to the school. We want to think about those contributions as well, and we want them to be unique contributions. All of this stuff, of course, permeates or transcends this particular essay, we want to think about the other essays and what other slices of you we want to make sure come across. Your resume, your recommendations, recommender selection, recommendation strategy, interview prep. A lot of what I've talked about here today, later, not exclusively, but later needs to get communicated verbally and person to person in a concise fashion and a credible and connected fashion. Interview prep as well, all the different parts of the application process we partner with people on. So again, we invite you, of course, to sign up for services, but you can start with a free consultation if you'd like. Check out those testimonials as well. Let's pivot over to questions, and we'll spend a few minutes there. All right. And we do have a question. I'm just going to, I guess, go in reverse order and see what we can identify here. We have one question from Abrajidan. The Ross admissions director in her video says not to mention why Ross and why MBA. So is it better to leave that part out of the 200-word essay? The answer to that is yes. We looked a moment ago. Let me see if I could pull that back up at that essay question. There we go. What is your short-term career goal and why? So yeah, grapple with take a look at the nuances of that question, look at what they are specifically requesting. And the answer to that, both kind of verbatim in the essay question, as well as from the Ross admissions director in her video. You don't have to talk about, you shouldn't talk about why Ross, why MBA. The question is asking, what is your short-term goal and why? I might have mentioned in passing that certain of these essays, even if they don't explicitly ask for a certain part, maybe in that Cornell Johnson essay question, there could be a little bit of a nod, like a concluding sentence or something that projects forward to, a why MBA or why our school. Here in such a short 200-word essay, and given the guidance from the admissions director, we would not want such a nod, even brief, to show up here for Ross. What is your short-term goal and why? Aditya, how would you try to convey in your essay for a tier 2 school that you want to pursue your MBA from there and not from maybe a school that's ranked higher? Great question. I think here your school research and engagement really, really comes to bear and really, really becomes valuable. You're not in these essays comparing the school you're applying to any others. You are speaking about that particular school and your fit with it, and why it uniquely benefits you and how you can uniquely benefit the school. So if you are really informed about the school and you've engaged with the school and you've spoken with current students and maybe some alumni, all of that is going to infuse these essays and come across. And that school, whether it's tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3 or wherever it falls in the rankings, is going to kind of feel that level of knowledge, level of specificity, and feel that love, so to speak. So that, I think, is don't worry about those other schools. Worry about the one that you are applying to. And if you pour yourself into it, pour yourself into the resources and engage well and write an informed and connected essay or essays, I think that will be solved. Let's see if we can find a couple of other questions. I think that might be it for the questions that we have. Was a question whether we could help somebody from India. Absolutely, we can. We work with applicants all around the world. We do work with applicants all around the world, including many with from India. So no matter where you're located, we are happy to help. Another question about MIT Sloan and HBS, not specifically asking about goals in their essay. How best to bring this aspect into Sloan's cover letter and HBS's essay. This is a little more, if I think if what we were doing here today was like essays 101, essay 101, that's almost like an essay 201. That's like some next level, more advanced. Those are some challenging essays. MIT Sloan is a 300-word cover letter. There again, I would encourage you, watch the videos, engage with the school, attend the information sessions. You'll hear MIT Sloan very often say that their belief is that your past actions and accomplishments and the things you've done are really what speaks to you. The past is the best indicator of the future. For years, that's why, they have a more behavioral focused, tell us about a time when kind of questions for their interview as well. And you'll even hear sometimes say, hey, we don't need your goals. We want to hear more about what you've done. So for that essay, it's basically write a cover letter seeking your place in the MIT Sloan class, 300 words. But look at there's a big paragraph that precedes it where they say what kind of people MIT Sloan students are. There's a lot of themes. Deconstruct that, grapple with the complexity of that. How MIT Sloan students, redefine the status quo. They don't use that exact language, but come up with new solutions to conventional problems and all these kind of things that they speak to there. And then think about how you, through the patterns and examples and things you've done in your life, fit with those. So really, goals is not a part of that. I have seen it effectively used toward kind of a conclusion or closing. It's not kind of like a project forward kind of closing remark, but you don't need to do that. And again, I would say MIT Sloan, if you listen closely and engage closely with the school, with students, watch the videos, they're really more focused about what you've done, what you've done in the past. They believe the past is the best indicator of the future. So they're not worried about those forward-looking goals, almost perhaps even acknowledging that, goals in MBA essays, goals change. People's interests change or evolve once they're in an MBA program. HBS, one of the more challenging, if not the most challenging essay out there because it's so open-ended. A lot of people don't talk about their goals at all in those, but by the same token, there is some percentage of people where if what they are so deeply and authentically sharing about themselves lends toward their goals, there could be an opportunity maybe in a final paragraph or two to kind of connect the deep slice of them that they've shared throughout the preponderance of the essay and project them forward into goals. But if you wrote a whole essay for Harvard or MIT Sloan, for that matter, about your goals, you're on the wrong track. And you should definitely revisit that and pay attention. These are things that again, if you watch videos like MIT Sloan, if you watch videos about our tip essay webinars, they've even got tips right there up on the website. You should pretty easily be able to identify, what's being, whether your goals should be in an essay like that. Harvard, a little more complicated because it's so open-ended, but it's definitely not a goals essay. I've seen certainly effective essays where they're drawn in, but not by the same token. Some people write great essays and don't even touch their goals. At Harvard, you've got Harvard 500 character entry in the application where your goals briefly come across. We have some questions about how to connect. The best way to connect is to start by signing up or requesting a free consultation up on the website that you see there, avantiprep.com. There'll be a free consultation tab where you can submit your information, schools you're interested in, where you are in the process. And last question for today, how many schools should I typically target to meet round one deadlines if I've not started yet with the essays? So tricky question. Actually, if you look back, I think it was late June, I did another video for GMAT Club, which was focused on round one versus round two and schools and timing and things like that. It's August 2nd right now. I think whether someone is able to kind of start now on essays and hit it round one targets, it depends on a few factors. it depends on when those deadlines are. Some round one deadlines are in the beginning of September. Others are in the first week or two of October. The ones in early September, obviously, it's only 4 weeks away. Those are going to be more difficult. But if they're later round one deadlines, it could be possible. Another factor there is how comfortable and skilled and efficient you are, I guess you could say, with developing and articulating things like this in written form. How good of a writer is somebody? Somebody who's not used to this, and maybe it's not in their core skill set, and that's no knock. You maybe have, probably have plenty of other great skills, but somebody who's more adept and feels like more of a natural writer would be able to do things more efficiently and more quickly and maybe meet those earlier deadlines or meet round one deadlines, whereas someone who's less familiar, less comfortable, less skilled with it probably has to look at round two. Other factors are, what else have you done? What else have you done application-wise? There's way more to this than essays. Essays are a big portion, and essays vary oftentimes from school to school, but your resume, when we work with applicants in a package, we pass their resume back and forth multiple times, deep iterations. It doesn't have to be a package either. It could be hourly services, and maybe we pass your resume back and forth 1 or 2 or 3 times, but there's a lot of resume work that you need to do. There's recommendations. I know that's not for you to do, but you got to think about who should your recommenders be. You've got to ask them. You've got to sit down with them. You should ideally put together some sort of prep document or highlight reel that deconstructs or strategizes, what themes or strengths would you hope that they can cover? What examples support those themes? You're not writing it for them, but many schools will even go on record and in video say, yeah, like sit with your recommenders, treat it like a year-end performance review almost. Sit down, walk through the deadlines, walk through the questions they're being asked, present a summary just as you might at a year-end performance review at your job. Present a summary to them that might list out strengths or themes or examples you hope they cover. Their recommendations need to be very, very thoughtful and very, very specific. And even though they're the ones who are ultimately writing them, that is still, I would say, should be kind of in your mental purview it's not something you just tap them on the shoulder and say, okay, go do this. There are video essay questions. There are the online applications, some more dense than others. Michigan Ross is pretty lean. London Business School's got a ton of written short answers. So there's a lot. You got to think about where you are across all those different elements of the process, and that will inform. And by the way, too, if you work with a consultant, you probably could get things done more quickly because you have you have professional guidance essentially. So all those factors can dictate that. But let's leave it there today. Now looking back here with this funny camera, we'll maybe end where we finished. I do apologize if I was ducking down a little bit during some of the presentation. I was looking at the presentation, didn't have my camera up on the screen, but hopefully what was up on the screen and the content and the information was the most helpful rather than the little box with my face in it. But we have a last question as we sign off here. Would we provide consultations regarding masters in finance? We do work with applicants on other types of graduate programs as well. Oftentimes they are business adjacent, such as masters in finance, masters in business analytics, masters in management, but to others still as well, executive MBAs, part-time MBAs. So whatever the case may be, feel free to submit a free consultation request on the website. We'll take a look at that, and we hope that you have the opportunity to connect. Thank you again for joining us today. Hope that the conversation was helpful. Wish you the best of luck, of course, in your application process. And if we can be of any assistance in that or provide any guidance along the way, whether related to all the things we talked about today or some of the others I mentioned, and there are many, many, many others, from resume to recommendations to interview prep, video essays, short answers, you name it, scholarship negotiations, waitlist support, at the front end of the process, essay brainstorming, story and career goal development, school selection, school strategy, school research and engagement, we would be happy to connect on any and all of the above. So we wish you the best of luck. We hope you have the opportunity to connect, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you so much.